Hello everybody, welcome back to Wolfeei. Today we're going to be looking at a potential way to predict what will happen for MCC in terms of which events they'll host in Season 5, 2025, however you want to, talk about it. Disclaimer, yes, I did make a video about this already, and yes, the reason I'm doing this again is because this video was not entirely the greatest. Not that I did anything wrong or anything like that, right? I just feel like I kind of rushed this one and didn't really put thought into it. So this time around, I made proper analysis, proper prediction, and we'll hopefully have something that makes a little bit more sense and is a little bit more interesting for you to look at in terms of, hey, what might happen this year? So, first, this is the post that inspired it. This person made a possible crammed Season 5 scheduling, feel free to discuss, rendition, where they think that MCC comes back in March, then has an event in April, May, blah, blah, whatever, then takes a break in September, and then for the rest they have this. Let me first analyze this before we get into my renditions of this. You can see I have a couple things, so we'll get to it in a little bit, okay? First off, so, I think a March return is too soon. I think with how MCC is approaching things, they aren't going to just completely 180 their approach from Season 4, because I think overall Season 4 was really, really successful for MCC. I think they brought a lot of their, most beloved players back, people like Phil and Green obviously playing much more actively near the end of the year. And there's other things that just have gone well for them this year. So I don't think they're going to take a 180 approach to how they've done MCC in Season 4, so I don't think they're going to just randomly decide, let's just not have a break. So I think March is too soon. For the rest, I think this relatively makes sense. I don't really have much to say against this. I do think Party might not happen again, but I'll talk about that a little bit maybe further on, because I don't know if if the public perception from the last time is makes it appealing to run it back, but we'll get into it. First rendition. Lock-in edition. January break, you gotta take a month off, and then Ender Cup. Take a break in October, of course. You gotta breathe at some point. Then MCC Party 3. Screw the feedback, run it back, and then Ender Cup X, because it sounds cool. Obviously, this is a joke, but I just wanted to, hey, throw a little sprinkle of Silly Billy in there. So there you go. 8 Ender Cups back to back, then take some time off, then do Party 3, and then do another Ender Cup. I think this would be great, guys. I would love this. Same flip side, PB got to do Dragon Pit at least 15 times in this year, otherwise they're throwing. Actually, next up is the proper analysis. This is what happened last year. And we also have some info on what maybe was and wasn't loved about this year, right? So, the break was up until the start of May, because they had a May 4th event, right? They had like Star Wars theme, blah, 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 whatever, with kickoff. So they had an early May return, which meant that I think December event in 2023 probably was in the middle of the month. So they had about 4.5 months off. Obviously, some of that time is fully off and they don't do anything, but some of that time is preparing for the next season. Then, they had a very busy schedule following that, with 2 events in June, Pride at the start and Twitch Rivals EU at the end of June, and then they had Ender Cup in the middle of July-ish, right? Then August was no event, because Ender Cup is so much workload. Obviously, they should have no events in August. It would be very crammed and would be probably a lesser quality MCC that they shouldn't have hosted within the quality of this year. Then September had an early Rising event and like a late-ish Twitch Rivals event. So Twitch Rivals was a double stacked event in 2024. Then they had their second and only other regular event in October, which was Haunted Hoedown, which I think was near the end of October. Then we saw no event in November, but then their anniversary special was MCC Party 2 in December. So this one, obviously, as you can see, I think Ender Cup is the main reason why this schedule is a little bit odd, because obviously had Ender Cup been a regular MCC, we probably could have seen an event in August, but alas, or we would have seen probably Rising in August, whatever, right? Anyways, yeah, so this is what happened last year. What was liked, what was disliked? I think what was liked is from the player side of things. I feel like this approach to MCC generally is better than what happened in Season 3, because you have more special events, events that have more attention put on them. However, there are less. But for some people, that's good, because if you get in most events, you still get in most events, but you get in a little bit less MCCs than Season 3. But for some of the infrequent players, it might be a little bit because they only play like 2-3 times a year, maybe even once in the year, and that's a little bit meh in my opinion. Or even 0. some people didn't get to play, so a little bit meh about that. But obviously, that's in retrospect. We can look at what potentially could change in terms of how things could be approached. And now I will throw another disclaimer. Obviously, I am an event host. I have no info on how MCC will host events in Season 5, okay? I just talked to some people throughout Season 4. I don't have insider info on specifically what might happen. I just have a pretty decent understanding of how event hosting works, of course, because I have experience, and also I have a pretty decent understanding of what MCC might want to do because of their players or whatever, right? So, here is the info that we know before we get into the proper prediction. We know for sure that January is going to be a break, and we can very safely assume that February is going to be a break, because in past MCCs, even Season 3, where they had, or it was either Season 3 or Season 2B, they came back in March, and that was like really, really soon. And that was like by far the soonest that felt like it could be realistic. So we know for sure that January and February are going to be completely nothing, right? There's no chance that we're going to see an event in these months unless they do something insane and hire like double the staff team to make sure things are able to happen, which they're not going to do. So that's all we know in terms of that. Then we don't really know anything for sure about March or April. No clue if anything is confirmed to happen there. There's a chance they can still take a break there. Maybe they'll come back in March. We don't know. May is a bit of an interesting one. This is something where I'll go to the notes down here. It's very likely that Noxru, Scott, whatever, right, want to do both Twitch Rivals events again. Twitch Rivals is one of the more exciting versions of MCC to them and to a lot of other people as well, and they are pretty open opportunities for them to take. Obviously, Twitch likes working with MCC because they've done it 3 times now, and it's been successful every single time. So I think they'll probably do it again for both of these events. The reason why the EU event is not written down here is because TwitchCon EU, you can maybe see it up here, is either on the 31st of May in terms of the event. It's on the 31st of May and the 1st of June, which means that the MCC is either on the 31st of May or the 1st of June. So I can't put it in May or June because it could be either of them. But we know that there's a Twitch Rivals event somewhere here. Somewhere in here, there's a Twitch Rivals event. What we also know is that Pride happens every single time, and obviously with Scott specifically, obviously being an LGBTQ member himself, he will put a lot of love and effort into hosting a Pride event, and also the Noxru obviously want to do it as well. But what we know is because Twitch Rivals will be, or TwitchCon will be either at the end of May or early June, Pride will probably end up being late June, or at least like mid-late June at earliest, because obviously there's going to be at minimum 3 weeks in between the events, or maybe 2 if we're lucky, but probably 3, especially because Pride usually has a little bit of extra attention put into it. So we know that the June Pride event is going to be late. Then for the rest, we don't know if they're going to host events in July, August, September. There's absolutely no confirmation on that, so we'll see, I guess. What we do know, because I think that, yeah, this is probably relevant for this rough time period, is that Rising is something that the Noxer really like to do. Specifically, Avondale has been very vocal that he really likes doing them. He's been more involved since Rising 2 and Rising 3. I feel like he was the most involved in terms of, Noxer members engaging with Rising people, etc. Obviously, from I think what we remember seeing is the Rising players even got like jerseys and stuff. So it seems like they really care to host Rising events. So we'll probably see a Rising 4. It would just make sense from their perspective. I don't think Rising 3 was a miss. I know some people will say it is, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. So we'll see. So I didn't write that down here, but probably Rising 4 is probably going to happen as well, because Rising 4 because they like to do it, probably in roughly this, somewhere here. Then what we also know is there's a Twitch Rivals event in October, because there is TwitchCon NA on October 17th, 18th, and 19th, which means we can very safely predict there to be a Rivals event in the middle of October. And we also know that they usually, at least, do an anniversary event in November or December with Party 2. So that's why this hasn't been labeled specifically either. But we know that they usually like doing an anniversary event somewhere around here. And then what I also forgot to mention is that MCC Scuffed has been mentioned by the Noxru and more specifically Stefan to be something that they really want to do at some point again. And I'm fairly sure that they probably would have liked to do it in 2024, but weren't able to. So they'll probably find a time to do it this year. Obviously, this is a very packed year, and where would you put Scuffed in this selection of events without taking away either a regular event or doing it instead of Party 2, which only makes sense in retrospect, but at the time wouldn't have made sense. So anyways, that's all the info we know for sure. Then comes the prediction. I will say that I put dates to roughly estimate times, because we know when Rivals is, we'll probably be able to assume roughly when Pride is, and we know when the other Rivals is. That's pretty much it. So I just put dates to kind of assume and kind of put things into perspective of how things can go. So in this instance, there would be 9 MCCs in the entire year, 4 of them being regular ones and 5 of them being special ones. I think this ratio is the most optimistic ratio you could have if you are a regular event enjoyer. I don't think more than half of the events are going to be regular MCCs. I think it's either going to be 3 or 4, maybe 2, but probably 3 at minimum, and mostly 4. It's either one of those probably this year. Then you know for sure there's going to be probably 4 special events confirmed, most likely even 5. Which is that there's going to be 2 Twitch Rivals events, there's going to be a Pride event, there's most likely going to be a Rising event, and there's usually a special event for the anniversary, which is what I have roughly predicted here. I kind of merged 2 ideas together, which is what I'll get into now. Obviously here I mentioned that Noxer wants to do another Scuffed, and one thing that I recall from Scuffed is that they specifically mentioned, because if you don't know, Scuffed 1 was on April Fool's Day. They specifically mentioned that the MCC event was called MCC Scuffed over MCC April Fools, because they would like to be able to host that event at any potential moment, or at least be able to host it outside of April 1st events, So, maybe it could be in November. I think it would not be a bad idea to do the Scuffed event in November. I do want to say, and this is a full transparency thing, this schedule that I have put here is maybe a little bit unrealistic because there's 2 issues. First issue is this start of the year is kind of too open. You have an event in mid-late April. It's either, I put the 19th because that's the closest to Easter, and I named it Easter Experience because it's a pun they could do if they really wanted to. This could make sense, in my opinion, that they come back on April 19th or, 26th, 12th, whatever, right? I think it's going to be April, but not the start of April, probably mid-late April. The issue is the next event would be either the last day or of May or the first day of June. That is a 6-week gap, roughly. No, exactly, pretty much. A 6-week gap between the MCCs at the start of the year, which is very unlikely. They usually putting a little bit more activity at the start. So this is the major flaw with this plan or this prediction, that there is no middle event between these events. The reason I didn't put an event here is because I wanted to do an Easter themed thing. They could do it on the 12th and then they'd have a little bit more room. And I also didn't want to predict a May event 2 or 3 weeks before Twitch Rivals, although there was Rising before Twitch Rivals in 2024. So maybe there is a potential chance that they'll have an event in early May, but we'll see. I just predicted this because it's the simplest and potentially safest approach. And then the second problem with this prediction is that after Twitch Rivals EU, they have a pretty busy schedule of one MCC at least per month, and sometimes even only 3 weeks between events. This is not necessarily unrealistic, but it's maybe slightly copium, considering that they did take 2 break months last year. Although, you know, some of these events are only like 5-ish weeks apart. Like Haunted Hoden was at the last potential date in October, and I think MCC Party was at the first potential date in December, so that was probably like 5 weeks. But still, last time they took 2 whole months off. One of them was obviously because of Ender Cup. The other one was probably because of timing issues. They either had to skip November or skip December if they wanted to, you know, do MCC Party 2 the way they planned. So, yep. And this is, you know, slightly more spread out, but it could potentially be slightly unrealistic for them to do it. Also, I'll just go over everything just as a little bit of a recap. So, Easter Experience, Easter-themed event for April. I think the last time they did this was the first time they did this, which was in like MCC 4. I looked it up, so I'm trying to remember the name or the number. I think it was MCC 4 was Easter themed, and I don't know if they've done it since. So could be fun. Then we know Twitch Rivals is happening. We know Pride is happening. I called it Summer Slam for July. I mean, it could also be in August, but then if you put it in August, that might mess up the schedule a little bit further. I don't know. But yeah, summer themed event, probably in July or August. I put Rising in August, but it could also be in September. And then I wrote down Freaky Fall because, I don't know, just trying to come up with something fall themed, or autumn could be there too. It's just that fall is like a little bit easier for naming stuff either way. Twitch Rivals we know is happening. Scuffed or Anniversary or whatever in November makes sense to be roughly in the middle, because I think what they'll probably want to do this time around is do a Christmas or winter themed regular event to end off the year, because that is like one of the most like critical feedback things about this most recent year of MCC is that people really missed that there wasn't a winter event to end off the year, especially that there was only 2 regular events. So I think they'll probably do it, is my hope. And I call it Winter Wonderland because that's the first thing that came to mind. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this prediction, quote unquote. Let me actually just make sure it's in quotes, because this is mostly just an analysis of what would make sense and not necessarily what I like. I mean, I guess this is close to what I think could happen. I would be surprised if this is accurate. I also don't really care if it's accurate. I just wanted to give some analysis insight on what potentially could happen in this year of MCC. So yeah, fingers crossed for an April return. An earlier return obviously could be fun. I don't necessarily want them to do it because I can understand that will cause other things to maybe get a little bit more complicated. Unless an early return means that they'll take a break in the middle of the year, then that would be perfectly fine. You could move, you know, this regular event could be moved to late March, put another regular event, or like move. Hold on, try again. You could do a regular event that's not Easter themed in like early April, maybe like a Fool's event, but it's like a regular event. Then do an early May, and then you have, you know, a bit more of a packed first start, and then maybe take off August, and then put Rising in September. But we'll see. I don't know. Anyways, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see y'all, I guess, later. I don't know. Goodbye.